YouTube. Here we are on our first episode of Witching Hour Wednesdays. In case you can't see, Becca is not joining me. She is sick, so I am joined by our two guest members. This is Jordan, and this is Dominique. And so if you watched our intro video, you know that this series is going to be just us hanging out, talking about our paranormal experiences and ghost stories that we've had. I'm guessing that the general consensus is that I'm going first.
Yeah.
Alrighty then, I'm going first. Okay, so the story that I'm going to be talking about today is about my dad's house and the spirits that are there. There's two spirits in his home. There's a man and a woman. The woman I don't get a whole lot on, but the man seems very 17th century-ish by the image that I get of him as far as outfit, like the long coat, bowler hat, mustache, that whole bit. And he's very much not friendly. He gives me a very, very bad vibe. When I'd be in the house, I was afraid to walk down the hallways because I could hear or feel him walking behind me, not just like at the end of the hallway. It felt like he was right up on me. Like if I would have turned around, his face would be like right here, kind of. So I would walk through the hallways just not even wanting to open my eyes. Being in that house in the dark was less than comforting. The woman wasn't as scary. I could actually hear her and the man arguing at sometimes. There was one occasion when I was in my room and I thought that my parents were arguing. Come to find out they weren't home, so that was fun. And then there's continuous sounds of footsteps up above, and particularly in my room. Apparently my parents and my grandmother heard none of this. It was mostly me and my boyfriend that had the experiences. Dominique had one experience with me while she was there, which we're going to talk about later, that was pretty fucking scary. And then you could hear cabinets opening and closing and just voices and all the traditional stuff that happens with hauntings. On one such occasion, Dominique was over with me and we found footprints on my fridge, like starting from the top, going upside down, like someone was walking down the front of my fridge, which was pretty interesting. And then
Still creeps me out.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that one happened. That's pretty barefoot footprints, by the way, no shoes, just someone walking. And it was like children footprints. They weren't more than like this size, so they were pretty small. Still, no explanation for that whatsoever. And then when she was over, the experience that we had with it was that we were in my room and we were home alone. She was waiting for her ride. And we could hear the footsteps walking above my room, which was creeping her out. I had told her about the stuff that had happened at my house before, but this was the first time she had a chance to experience it. And we could hear cabinets opening and closing in the kitchen, and I think like scratching on the walls. Was that what we were hearing? And then the back room at the end of the hallway was locked because my parents keep stuff in there, and my cousins were over, so I understand why the room was locked, but the computer was in there, so we had tried to go in there, but I was like, okay, it's locked, whatever, the lights were out. So we went back to my room and waited for her ride, and then around like 11:30, her ride got there, and we walked out of the room and looked down at the end of the hallway, and we both just kind of like stopped, because we could see that the light was on underneath the door, and so we're like, we checked outside first before we even walked up to it. No one was home yet. It was still just me and her. And so we walk over to the room, and as you get closer to the door, we could hear that the TV was on in there. It wasn't on very loud, but you could hear it in there. And I tried to open it, and the door was still locked. So somehow this room managed to turn on the light and the TV and just be hanging out in there with the door still locked and no one home. And by coincidence, that happens to be the room that the male spirit in the house that I named Uncle Chester, just because it seemed appropriate. He's just as creepy. If anybody knows the story of the actual Uncle Chester, he's very much as frightening, and it's just what came out, so it stuck. That's what we called him, but that's his room, as we call it, and so it was really creepy. And then she left me there to die.
But did you? But did you die, though?
But I could have. I felt like it. I went back to my room and locked my door and just, like, waited. I was so scared.
Does locking the door help?
No.
Because I'm pretty sure I got in once.
No, because, yeah, I did have, anybody knows about like paranormal activity, a lot of the times malevolent spirits will leave like bruises or scratches on people. I used to wake up a lot with different bruises on my legs that had zero explanation. Like I know I hadn't fallen or anything or hit anything. I don't remember any of that happening. And then on one such occasion, I woke up and I had 3 scratches like this, one going over my eye down the side of my face when I went to the mirror to get ready for work that morning. And so that was terrifying. And then the way my room like set up was you could walk through the door and my bed would be to the right. And so I was laying with my back facing that way, facing the door. And for a moment, I thought that my boyfriend was staying the night for some reason because I had a mirror behind my door, so if I looked, I could see behind me, and I tried my best not to look in that because that's just creepy, and I always feel like I could see something behind me. And I was having those feelings the very same night, and then I had just started to fall asleep, and I could feel like a hand on my back, like someone was laying in bed with me, and it just like softly, and right in the center of my back goes like this, all soft, and rubbed its finger on me, and it pulled my shirt a little bit like that. I have never flown out of my bed so fucking fast and got up and turned my light on and was just like, no. Like, I couldn't go back to sleep for the rest of that night and damn sure didn't turn my lights off again. Yeah, so that was some crazy stuff. There's probably 1,000 more things that's happened at my dad's house, but that's all I'm coming up with right now, so who's next?
I guess I'm going next because Jordan wanted to go last.
Okay.
I told you,
story
I
better
don't
be
have,
like
I don't
killer.
have stories, I have statements. I already told you.
The best is saved for last, so yours better be killer. So, I mean, we've had pretty haunting stuff in my family for quite a while. When I was little, we started with, like, it wasn't really, like, haunting, it was just paranormal activity. Simple as, like, we think it was my grandfather, because anytime anybody ever yelled at my grandmother, cupboards would shut, doors would slam, you would hear things turn on and off. So we just thought, okay, you know, maybe it's Opa telling us don't yell at her. We moved up to Pennsylvania on the East Coast. We were staying in a 2-story house. It's kind of big. One of my mom's friends needed help, so we were like, yeah, go ahead and move in with us. Her and her kids were with us. It was just her daughter, Samantha, and then her son, Matthew, and her. Everything was great and dandy for the first month, but then, like, random things would happen. Shoes would fly, clothes would fall off of coat hangers in the closet. We'd hear stomping coming down the stairs, and we would think it was Matthew, and we'd tell him to go to bed, and he'd be in bed asleep. So one day my older brother decided he was going to record in one of my mom's conversations as she was having a cigarette with her friend Julia, and he actually caught a deep voice saying, "You can have this recording." And nobody knew but him that he was recording. So we thought, okay, that's weird, but there's got to be an explanation for it. Like, maybe somebody saw him and was behind him. I'm not getting freaked out as I'm telling you. I want to say it was 2 days later. We were all sitting in the living room watching a movie. We were laughing, having a good time. We had the kitchen light on. We had just eaten dinner. And we had the living room light on. And we have our kitchen here all the way at the end of the house, our dining room right in the middle, and then we had our living room right in the front of the house. And we literally saw a spoon fly from the kitchen all the way to our front door. And we looked around and we're like, everybody's here, so who did that? So we went into the kitchen, couldn't find anything. So we were like, what in the world? Thought it was really weird. So a week later, my mom had this photo of an Italian chef sitting on one of our walls in the dining room. And it was just an Italian chef cooking, I think it was like pasta or something. It's like a painted picture. But I think it was like a week later that we saw there was like this big black dark spot on it, and it was really weird. So we told Shalia, since, you know, you started talking about the paranormal things and how that stuff was following you, and it's starting to happen here, we were like, you need to move. And we ended up moving a month later too, because it just never stopped.
That's crazy.
It was, yeah.
Children?
See, I don't have stories that are exciting because nothing happens when I'm around. But supposedly cupboards slam and stuff like that in our apartment. And my husband hears it all the time. I've occasionally like seen faces when I'm up at like 3 o'clock in the morning by myself and my husband's asleep. Then there's the story at work. It's not really a story, but there was the back room where my husband worked, and I walked back there to check on them because I was the supervisor over that portion. And I walked back there to check on them, and the portion of the room that we walked through to get to their room, lights were off. There was no music. Nothing was going on because that bay worth of people had gone home. And then I went back maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, and the lights were all on. The radio was on over the whole room, and the radio that controlled that was in a locked room with the lights off. And there, I swore when I looked in there that I saw eyes. So,
Okay.
also, my husband has said in more recent days that the other day a roll of tape came from one side of the room and hit him.
He told me about that. I also work with her husband.
He also had scratches on his arm. Like, he felt a burning, and then he looked at his arm, and there were scratches. So that's a thing that happened.
My boss actually blamed me for the tape flying because I supposedly brought the paranormal into the room by talking about all of this, because me and Becca also work with her husband. So apparently that's my fault.
Well, I mean, I've lived 18 years with him, so.
Well, it's Austin's fault too then.
Okay, I will be right back.
Okay.
I mean, yeah,
So-
he was the one recording when he caught that message, so I blame him. Older
Yeah.
brothers, man.
Older brothers bring stuff around. Is there any other stories that you want to talk about, or was that our wrap up for ghost stories? Was that it?
I mean, I'm currently living in a trailer that me and Danny are buying from his mom to start our own life and get away. Basically, we think there is a ghost who's not exactly happy that me and his family live there, for the simple fact that it's literally an older gentleman back from, I mean, what do you call him, like the Western times?
Yeah.
He's really tall. He wears like this brown and black suit, and he wears like the big tall top hat. I've literally woken up to him and been startled because he'll just stand there, and he whispers in our ears like he's freaking out because he can't find his pocket watch, and it creeps us all out. Justin's found scratches on his back. One of them's actually permanent. It bruised over, and then it's never faded out of his skin. Linda says that
That's
she's
creepy.
felt him pull on her ankles while she's trying to sleep. Yeah, and then one time, like, I was in the shower and I, like, felt something, like, hit the curtain, and I, like, was gonna open it and be like, Danny, stop, and I, like, looked and I was like, there's nobody there, and so, like, I literally, like, washed the soap off, got out, ran to my room and was like, did you do that? And he was like, do what? And I was like, did you smack the curtain while I was in the shower? And he was like, no. So, yeah, it was like, I didn't hear a door shut, nothing. It wasn't locked, so somebody could have come in, but they wouldn't have been able to leave in time, so it was really weird. But then Dukes also said that he's been doing dishes once before, and he's pretty deaf, and he was like, I could slightly hear a little girl saying, you are my sunshine, and like that freaked us the fuck out. It was, ooh.
No way.
That was recent though. He told us that last month, and I was like, thanks.
Thanks for that. It's comforting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess another thing that happened at my dad's house that I at the time thought was my grandma, I really did think that it was my grandma because, like, which also doesn't make sense, and I'm going to tell you why. I was in my bedroom, and I have the habit of staying up really, really late, and so it was probably about 4 or 5 at the time when my grandma would be waking up, and my room, my wall to my bedroom shares with, like, where the kitchen is, and my grandma is directly across the hall when I had lived there. and I heard her bedroom door open, because each of the rooms in the house, the doors are all messed up, so they have their own sound, so I can tell which door is opening. So her bedroom door opens, and I can hear her, like, or what I thought was my grandma, go into the living room, turn the TV on, and then I didn't hear any footsteps the entire time, which is creepy because you can always hear, my grandma has kind of like a heavy footstep, so I could hear her, but I didn't hear any footsteps. And the cabinets in the kitchen just all, like, faster than my grandma would be able to move across the kitchen. Like, they just started opening and shutting, and then the fridge opened and shut, and then the back door opened and shut, like, super quick, like, way faster than my grandma would be able to get across the kitchen. And then her bedroom door shut again. So in my mind, I'm like, is she losing it? Like, did she really just get up at 4 in the morning, turn the TV on, open everything in the house, and then go back to bed? And when I got up, like, her door was shut, and everyone was still asleep in the house. She didn't end up waking up for another 2 hours after that, and everything was shut in the house. The back door was still locked, but the living room TV was on. So I'm assuming that was one of the ghosts in the house, because there's no possible way that was my grandma, for the fact that there was no footsteps. She claims to have been sleeping the entire time, and there's no way that my grandma moved that fast around the entire house. But yeah. So
I mean, not unless you're related to the Flash.
She might be. My grandma might have had relations with the Flash family at one point. You never know. But anyways, I think that's all of our stories for today. Jordan has stepped out, so we'll just go ahead and say goodbye for her. She'll probably be back on another video if I can convince her. This one took some convincing, but perhaps I can get Dominique to come back too. But for now, I think that is it, so we will say goodbye for this time. Until next week. Bye.
Bye.